Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of the Inkwell Gamers podcast. Today, we are primarily going to talk about our experience in week 2 of the set championships. These whole last 2 weeks have been kind of exhausting, play testing, and then tournaments each day, but honestly, it was a lot of fun. Dana, how'd you feel about not just this past weekend, but about the 2 weeks as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, exactly like you described it. It was chaotic, it was tiring, but it was a lot of fun because I feel like there was definitely, you're getting a lot of games in a short amount of time, and it is in an environment that isn't like Pixelborn, where you're just maybe playing a different deck one game at a time. Like you're actually facing best of 3 and able to identify, okay, how does my deck truly play out against another one in a best of 3 match. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of data to take away from it to where I can now try to figure out what I'm going to do for Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you wouldn't think it, but playing like 6 rounds on Saturday and then playing another 5 or 6 rounds or whatever on Sunday, that can get pretty tiring, can't it?
It does. And I feel like I've definitely noticed that in the pattern in which I have performed. So this week was pretty much similar to last week for me. So Saturday, once again, I went undefeated in Swiss. I went 4-0-1. Me and the other person decided to intentionally draw the last round, but even prior to that, I was the only one that was undefeated. So I feel like that was a nice moment for me to reflect and realize that, okay, I am growing as a player. And the week before when I did that on Saturday wasn't a fluke. Because I feel like when I had done that, I definitely walked away with imposter syndrome, thinking, was I just lucky or what? But I think doing it again is like, you know what, I'm getting there.
Yeah,
you
validated you.
Right. Like, yes, I didn't. And you know what? It actually was kind of deja vu because, again, first round of top 8, I lost. So, like, that's kind of like my MO at this point. However, I feel like even though I didn't even get a top 4 stitch, it's still validating for me because when we talked about our experience a couple months prior, like a couple months at this point, we went to a tournament and I didn't win a match. So that was really discouraging. Granted, I was playing a deck that I didn't practice with and I was very uncomfortable with and was not my playstyle, but nonetheless, I walked away like, wow, I suck. But I feel like the past 2 weeks, it's like, you know what? Like, I'm getting there, So.
Yeah, I was really proud of you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am going to admit that I did not follow my own advice that I said last week to do, and that is take notes and journal in between matches. So I don't really have much to talk about as far as what I played against and how I did and if I did anything wrong, which I do have one thing that's actually my game that I lost in top 8. But I think part of that was because this past weekend, the 2 tournaments, we saw a lot of people that we know. And instead of taking out my notebook and journaling in between rounds, I conversed with them. And I think that has been the most fun experience for me. Is on Saturday, we saw people from 4 different tournaments that we had been to, basically. We saw people from the previous weekend for week 1 of the set championships, where it was from one store that was an hour and a half away, another one that was 45 minutes away. Then we saw someone from another store that's 30 minutes away, and then people from our own LGS. And so it's getting to the point now where whenever we go to a tournament, we actually are seeing people that we've already met. And so that's been, I think, the coolest experience for me so far.
Yeah, and a lot of them seem like pretty decent people too, so that's nice.
Yeah, it's been really fun. But really my only My only review, I guess, of Saturday was that my first round of top 8, when I had lost, I think it stung a little bit more than when I had done it the previous week, because my previous week top 8 loss was, I think I just had really bad draws. I didn't really see very much of my Ursulas in those games, and those are pretty powerful when I'm facing another Emerald deck. So that was kind of what happened the prior week. And this week, it stung a little bit more because I can pretty much narrow it down to something that I had done. And so knowing that is a little bit more painful. So it was we went to game 3. The game that I did lose in that match, I also did not see much of my Ursulas for that. So I feel like that's kind of like a thing. If I don't hit the ground running with Curse Merfolk and Flynn, and then I don't follow up with both Ursulas, it's a pretty rough match for me, I feel like. And so that was the first loss of that match. But then come game 3, it got to the point where I was ahead in lore, but they had 6 ink with 1 card in hand, and I had 2 cards in my hand and a couple on the board. And in the back of my mind, I had something that I've always had you tell me, because I have fallen to playing into B prep before. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, well, there's a low chance that either they have B prep in their hand and they're waiting for an inkable, or maybe they draw it or whatever, and then they have enough ink to play it. So I did not play the 2 characters in my hand, and I was almost too conservative. And so I didn't play those, and a couple turns later, they did have B prep. And so it wiped my board, but then they basically put 2 Queen's Castles down, and then the 2 cards that I had left in my hand couldn't outrace it. So, and because I think they followed up with like a Medusa or a Tremaine or something that also took those off the board. And then at that point, it was like too late. And if I would have put those on the board and just quested, I think I could have outraced it. But I mean, I was being conservative, and then we talked after on the way home, and you're like, sometimes you just, in those situations, you just got to risk it and count on them having it, and just, or like, I don't know, how did you say it?
So I remember the situation very well. They had 2 characters and a Queen's Castle on board. You were at 16 lore with 2 characters on board that I just quested, but you also had like a Prince John and a Flynn Rider in your hand, as well as the 3-cost Ursula. And if you just play your two lore characters that you have in your hand and they don't have Be Prepared, then you win the game right there. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening was you played nothing, they didn't have Be Prepared, then they just made favorable trades into your board, and the Queen's Castle that was already in play ran away with the game.
Well, they also slammed another one in.
Then like 2 turns later, they slammed another one, so it just ended up being a little rough. That's one of those situations where, like, you probably can't beat them having Be Prepared either way, so you almost just have to play into it, because if they don't have it, then you'll probably win the game. Mm-hmm. And that's unfortunately the situation that would have came about. They didn't have it, and it's not something that you really necessarily learn until you're in that position. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have to make them have it, right? Like, make them have the Be Prepared, because if they don't, you'll win. If they do have it, sometimes they have it, and you lose, and that sucks, but sometimes you gotta make them have it.
Mm. Yep. No, I was way too conservative, but it's fine.
It's a learning moment.
It is. I think that is something that I can only obtain myself through experiences like that. I know that we've talked about this too, where, like, yeah, the general rule of thumb is to not play and to be prepared, and that's something that people will suggest, and knowing the situations in which that would be an exception is something that I think I'm only going to get through experience, and I didn't have enough of that.
Yeah, if you had like 5 cards in your hand to where if they play a Be Prepared, you can just slam 3 other characters and like you're not going to lose board position that turn, then it might be okay, but just how the game was played out, if you didn't play anything, you lost board position, then they got to start drawing a bunch of extra cards to where they would most likely find it anyway, and they did, unfortunately. Tell them what happened in round 3.
We played each other.
How'd that go?
Oh, I beat you.
Oh, yeah, she kicked my butt.
2-0.
2-0. It really was not even close either.
Yeah, it felt really good. I was actually kind of nervous because since we play together so often and he kind of has been coaching me through my experience trying to get competitive, he knows how I think. And so I was almost kind of nervous that you were going to beat me because you know how I think. But I think, unfortunately, my deck is just a really good matchup against yours, and I drew really well, and I think I played really well. I don't think I identified any misplays per se, and it went really fast, let's just say.
You drew a lot of Curse Merfolks, a lot of Flynn Riders, and
The bane of your existence.
I died very quickly. Which kind of brings me to my experience over the 2 weekends that I think what I gathered is against my record as a whole was 15, 4, and 3. And all 4 of my losses were to Emerald decks. So
it's telling you something. The universe is telling you something.
It is quite telling that I beat everything else. And I think a lot of the matches that I played were 2-0. So I beat everything else pretty solidly. But I think I won 2 matches against Emerald decks. And they were both Saturday. One was against the guy that beat me the weekend before. And then one was also in the finals. But...
Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. But yeah, so 15, 4, and 3... a pretty good record over 3 tournaments. Just need to figure out how to beat Emerald decks with Ruby Sapphire because it feels really powerful into everything else.
Right. Of course. So, since you already alluded to it, just jump right in. How'd you do on Saturday?
Even though you beat me in the 3rd round, I won.
Nice.
I was able to take it down. I played Ruby Sapphire the first 2 rounds, won 4 games, lost 0, lost to you 0-2. You kicked my butt. Then I played against Emerald Amethyst, and that was a kind of a revenge match for me because they beat me last week in the finals, that person. So I beat him, and then I drew into the top 8. First round of the top 8, it was Ruby Amethyst. I think the matchup's pretty even, and the only reason why I feel this way is because whichever side I'm playing, I feel pretty good about. So I'm not really sure what that means. It's just
I'm not sure what that means either.
Like, if I'm playing the Ruby Amethyst side, and I've played a lot of Ruby Amethyst, like, I'm pretty comfortable into the matchup.
Yeah.
If I'm on the Ruby Sapphire side, I'm also pretty comfortable in the matchup. So I think... I guess what that means is that there's just room to outplay your opponent as long as you just have to mulligan pretty aggressively to the draws you want, which I think is really important for the Ruby Sapphire deck anyway. And then in the finals, played one of our friends and our league mates. He was playing Emerald Steel, and yeah, I got pretty lucky to top deck a Be Prepared one game, and the next game... I'm pretty sure he got stuck on like 3 ink and couldn't really do much for a while. So,
you got lucky there.
I got a little lucky. I top decked the Be Prepared when I needed.
Not to take away from it, but hey, I'm proud of you. That's awesome.
So yeah, got my champion playmat. I was probably going to be pretty heartbroken if I went to all 3 events and got second to Emerald decks.
Yeah, that would have been pretty heartbreaking, but you didn't. So
we didn't.
Because of that, I didn't end up judging on Sunday, and we swapped places because I told him going into the finals, I was like, if you win tonight, can I please play tomorrow and you judge instead? And so he agreed upon it, and that's what happened. So that's why I got to play on Sunday, and I'm sorry that you didn't get to, but I'm also not sorry because you still have 3 mats and 3 stitches, and I have 0. So
They were ours collectively.
well, now that you do have your champion mat, you betcha I'm using your second place. But yeah, so going into Sunday, I started off pretty rough, similarly to how I started last Sunday. I dropped my first 2 matches, and then I won the next 3. So I did end up at 3-2, but unfortunately didn't make the top cut. But I feel like my biggest takeaway is being able to recognize the growth. I think when I have previously gone to tournaments, my goal has just been to win a match. And now I feel like I've proven to myself that I can be someone that can take away a couple of matches and possibly even make top cut. So I think I'm not going to go gung-ho and say my next goal is to win a tournament. Like, of course, that's going to be my long-term goal, but I feel like going back to what we said last week, realistic expectations for myself, I think my goal now is just to make top cut. And so going forward, until I can start hitting that consistently and then bump my goal up to be finishing even higher, I'm at least going to walk away like with the expectation that I really want to do top cut anywhere I go.
Yeah, I love that.
With the same like mid-sized or like small tournaments, right?
Yeah,
like obviously I know I'm not going to probably make top cut at Atlanta, but I mean, a girl can dream, right?
Yeah.
But it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, so just doing some quick math of your record. I think you went 12. What was it? What I just? Oh my gosh! 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you went 12, 6, and
3 because I 12, 6, and
12, 6, and 2.
Yeah,
you went 12, 6, and 2 over the past 2 weekends. So discounting draws, you won 66% of your matches. How do you feel about that?
Pretty surprised.
Pretty surprised?
Yeah. I mean, I'm over 50%. I mean, come on.
Well over 50%. 66% is pretty good.
Hey, D's get degrees.
This is like an A in card games, though.
I thought like an 80% percentage win is, or is that way too high?
Oh, that's insane. Like professional Magic players, they don't hit 70% win percentage.
Oh.
So,
well, coming from a softball background, batting .666 is pretty damn good. So I guess I'll take that.
That's incredible.
I know. I know.
Yeah, but it's also really good in card games. Winning 2/3 of your matches is pretty solid. So I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. Like I said, I feel like the biggest thing for me is proving to myself this past weekend that going undefeated in Swiss last weekend wasn't a fluke. And it's helping me with my imposter syndrome. I still don't, by all means, I don't think I'm this great player, but I think I can hold my own. I know what I'm doing, or I know now when I do something wrong, or when I'm in a situation, like if I have like a bad draw, like I know automatically like that my starting hand might be bad, if my mulligan wasn't good or whatever. So like I feel like I am holding my own, and I'm not just like going in there blindly playing a deck that I really don't know anything about as in depth. And I think part of that has been using a similar version for the PAC tournament a couple weeks ago, and then just using the same deck, making a couple tweaks along the way, but I feel like I am becoming one with my deck.
Yeah, I think one of the best things about Lorcana currently is that you can kind of just play one deck and get really good at it, and you'll be pretty heavily rewarded with it. I think being a specialist in one deck is probably going to pay off in, well, for the foreseeable future, just because like we're not going to have giant shakeups in the meta. I think for the next few sets we're still going to have Ruby Amethyst decks, we're still going to have Steel Song decks, we'll probably still have the Ruby Sapphire ramp decks and your Emerald Steel deck just because of how good the cards are. So I think for the foreseeable future, until or if we get a rotation of the current sets when those rotate out, or if they do, being a specialist in one archetype could really pay off for you.
Mm-hmm. I think that I've finally reached the point that I've been expressing that I wanted to obtain the past several weeks, and that is finding what kind of player I am and what my play style is and what kind of deck I like to play. And I feel like I've found that in the Emerald Steel deck. And as long as I continue to like that play style, I'm pretty much going to stick with it, I think. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the set 4 cards will transform it to, but I still, at least for now and for the foreseeable future, anticipate still doing that even when set 4 comes out. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little bit different. I like to try different things and change it up mainly because I think I get maybe a little bored playing one deck all the time. That's why I constantly am changing commander decks. So, and yeah, I just like to try new things. And I mean, right now I'm having a lot of fun with Ruby Sapphire, so I'll probably keep doing that for a while. Dana, I kind of wanted to ask you, what kind of changes did you make this week for your deck?
So I was originally running the 6-cost Inkable Robin Hood that quests for 4, so big boy. And I liked having him in my deck the previous week because when I saw him early on, I could ink him without being heartbroken like I would be if I saw Robin or Beast or Tink. Like when I see those and I have to ink those like turn 2, it kind of hurts a little bit because I'm like, I'm going to need this later. But it was nice to be able to ink those worry-free. And then if I did see them later, it was, I'll just slap one down, right? But I felt like even though I didn't mind those cards in there, and I had 3 of them, I still needed something to put the other Emerald decks I was facing off tempo. And so because of that, I basically swapped those out for 2 kit Cloud Kickers and 1 Mother Knows Best. And the reason why I didn't go 3 kits is I wanted to have that 1 Mother Knows Best in there, because Ursula could double sing it, and I did do that. So I was pretty excited when I got to double sing that. But it also could take care of some of the characters that are larger than what Kit's ability does. So I think it was a good update. I didn't mind it and was kind of pleased with it. So I probably will at least keep it for the meantime until something else tickles my fancy.
Yeah, I get you.
I don't know why I said it like that, but here we are.
Is there anything specific that you did not like about your deck or might want to try or change going forward?
So earlier last week, I woke up one morning and I told you I dreamt Lorcana last night. Mm-hmm. And it was telling me, my dream was telling me, find a way to either do Grab Your Swords kit, Mother Knows Best, something like that. And so I did 2 of the 3, but I still find myself in situations where I think if I had Grab Your Sword right now, I could board wipe them. And so that was just, I don't know. And I know that, what do you say?
You can always find a use case for cards when they're not in your deck.
However, I feel like it is a testament that other decks like mine are playing Grab Your Sword where I am not.
Well, some also don't play Tink, so, it's up in the air.
Poor Kano both.
You could.
Whatever. All right, so enough about me. I feel like I talked a lot about myself this episode. Let's get into your first time being a Lorcana judge. How was that for you? And would you do it again?
So, I'm not going to lie. I did have a good amount of FOMO on Sunday. I did want the opportunity for a 4th Stitch, but at the same time, I wanted you to play too.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you put a lot of pressure on me that morning. You were like, if you don't get a fourth stitch to complete our set, and I was like, wow, thanks. No pressure. No, I know that you were kidding, and I know that you're just teasing, but
yeah. So I did have FOMO, but it was also kind of it was kind of nice also sitting out at the same time, just because I didn't have to go through 8 rounds of a grind essentially, just constantly thinking and being on the whole time.
After you already did it the day before.
Yeah, so that was nice, and there was only maybe like 4 judge calls the whole event, so it wasn't really very stressful.
At least there was none, because then you would have felt like it was a waste.
It was a waste. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I guess our LGS probably just appreciated the help anyway. So I was glad to do it.
I feel like it made the event more official.
Yeah, and it probably went a little more smoothly. Not that I was the best coordinator or judge or anything like that, but just having someone do it, I guess, helped out. And yeah, like if I were to not get into one of the challenge events that we could go to, then as far as, not getting a ticket in time, I wouldn't mind judging one of those.
Well, they accepted you to do Atlanta.
They did.
And you were going to do it, and then we got on the wait list, and you're like, nah.
Yeah, we ended up getting the ticket. I'm like, I'm not judging. I'm not doing that. So, yeah, it's something I would definitely do again. But really, I just like competing. I really love this game, so I obviously prefer to compete, but if Craig needs the help, if our local game store needs the help, I'll be happy to do it. No problem. So, yeah, I'm into it.
So let me ask you, what were those judge calls that you had to do?
Well, one, Dana was in the very first match of yours. You forgot about that, didn't you?
I totally forgot about that.
It was like 10 minutes into the round.
I still can't even remember.
Yeah, 10 minutes into the round, you had a Robin Hood that got banished.
Oh, that's
and
right. It was during my turn. Like, I was using it to that's right.
Yeah.
I was using it to challenge another character. So obviously I banished that character, so I gained my 2 lore, but then my Robin Hood also got banished. So we just wanted to double check that I could get both the 2 lore and the card draw.
Yep.
I can't believe I forgot that was your first one.
That was the first one. Another one was essentially just etiquette on making your intentions while playing the game known. So basically, one person asked if one person was going too fast going through their turn, if it was in the rules that they needed to slow down. I basically just said that they need to be clear about what they're doing and make sure you understand as well.
I wonder if they were silent and fast and just assuming that they were keeping up. And I feel like you get that with a lot of people who are coming from other games, like maybe Magic or something.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seemed like to me. But I could definitely tell that after I said that, I heard him announce what he was doing in that round more. So for the rest of that game at least. And then the last one, was it in the finals or maybe it was the semifinals? One guy just inked an extra time on his turn.
Oh yeah, it was the finals because I was there
finals,
watching.
That's too. Right. Yeah, one of the competitors just inked an extra time on his turn, and I just had to. I just recited to him how each of his first 3 turns played out. So
how much ink he should have.
So how much ink he should have.
He was playing a Sapphire Ruby deck, so obviously I think with the extra ramping that it got lost, what was for turn, what was with ramp, and there is just too much. And I think I did witness that was also a silent player too, and so I feel like even for your own sake, if you're someone that is playing a ramp deck, it almost might be beneficial for you to also say things out loud and announce what you're doing so you can remember it for yourself too, and then they can also keep track. And so I don't know,
that deck is kind of difficult because you're taking a a lot of game actions. You're playing a popsicle, drawing a card, playing a flower sham, drawing 2 more cards, then you're singing a song, inking with your quill. You're doing a lot of things on your turn.
Right.
So you want to be clear about what you're doing, but also, I mean, I don't know if this is really a big deal, but like, it can be hard to keep track of some things. I remember on Sunday, I think I forgot to unexert my fishbone quill.
Or you mean
on
Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I forgot to unexert my fishbone quill the first round that we played during my turn, and then there was some confusion on whether I had used it or not, and I hadn't used it, but I just didn't really want to go through the argument.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it ultimately, luckily, didn't really matter. But there's just a lot of game actions, and if you kind of take the time to just announce every single thing, that could make the game take a lot longer, especially in the finals of a tournament like this, where you would assume that the opponent can kind of keep up with what you're doing,
Yeah.
To an extent.
I mean, if anything, maybe like an abbreviated version.
Yeah.
Like when you're in high school and you have to read Shakespeare, but you don't, so you actually just read Spark Notes.
Yeah, the Spark Notes.
So, like, just give the Spark Notes. You don't have to say, I am going to sing one jump ahead with X character. Like, you can just be like, sing, like, I don't know.
Yeah. One thing that he started doing to the request of his opponent was that whatever he inked for the turn, he would just leave that face up, so he knew he inked for the turn specifically.
Yes.
And
then after his turn was over, I noticed he then flipped it over.
Yeah, he would flip it over. I actually think that's against the rules, but just for being clear and careful, I kind of would prefer that to be the rule.
And the big thing is the opponent also said that they were completely fine with it because it was almost hard for them to keep up with it too.
Yeah, it would help both players keep track of whether they inked for the turn or not. And then you just flip it over at the end of the turn and it's the same exact thing. So
I almost wonder if going forward, if someone is playing that kind of deck, because they technically can't do it, if maybe they just, whatever one that they put down, they put one of their little dice on it, and so they know that, okay, like the one with this die, I guess I should say die, the one with this die is my ink for turn, and then, so I don't know if that might help too, but yeah, I mean, you ramp decks, man. You end your game with like 20 ink, and it's absolutely redonkulous.
yeah, it's awesome.
For you.
Yeah, exactly. You get to like 15 ink and then
You can
you're
do
just good.
way more powerful things per turn because you can do multiple of them per turn. So
Yeah, I mean, that's why I love the deck. You have a really high card quality in your deck. You have extremely powerful cards. And the only issue with it is that sometimes they play a Curse Merfolk on turn 1 and you don't have time to do it. So, yeah, that's going to be my plan for the next month or so, is trying to figure out how to navigate the Cursed Merfolk matchups.
good luck to you.
I'm going to need it. Because I'm going to tell you, the Queen of Hearts is just a bad card. That 2-drop... Oh, it just... When you're on the play, they don't even have a character exerted, so you can't challenge anything on turn 2. And then they can just wait till you get a Prince John out before you challenge something. So they get to draw a card, whereas on the draw, you might be able to surprise them. But then it's still just a 2-2 in play that dies to so many different things, especially from the Steel version. From the Amethyst version, too, because they have, like, foxes that can get a value trade off of it, and the foxes really aren't that good in the matchup because that's the only thing they can really value trade with. Oh, there's got to be something better than Queen of Hearts. I don't know, that card sucks. It's inkable, that's the only thing it's good for.
Yeah, it definitely will be a lot of throwing ideas to the wall and seeing what sticks for the next month. So, or 3 weeks, I think we're at this point.
Yep, it's coming up fast. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 slots in the deck that I'm toying with, in the Queen of Hearts. They just might have to get out of the deck. They're just terrible. They're so bad.
Ugh. Well, we do have a weekend tournament coming up here where it's the pack tournament. So at least we'll be at home. We're not traveling anywhere, but maybe if you figure out something prior to then, you can test it.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably not play the Queen of Hearts this weekend. I might just put like 2 Judy Hops in there because when you don't have Flaversham, they combo with Popsicle a little bit, and then they can obviously take care of your opponent's items, which gives you an out to your opponent's flutes. The flute version of Steel Song can actually be an issue because it's just a consistent threat that you can't deal with very easily. But also, it has a little bit better body against the aggressive decks than Queen of Hearts, and it can quest for 2, so it's a little bit better in other matchups as well. So I think I'm going to start there this weekend, just play 3 Judys, no Queen of Hearts, and see where that takes me.
You said you have 3 of the queens right now, so it would just be an even swap.
So I have 2 Queen of Hearts right now and 1 Judy Hop, so I'll just take two queens out, put in 2 Judys, and
easy peasy.
Hopefully that makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm just going to keep playing my deck. Maybe I will find a way to fit Grab Your Sword in, but yeah, I'm just sticking to the thing I'm most comfortable with, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, my solution was, or not solution, I guess, my suggestion was to try and fit in Strike a Good Match somewhere. I think the one thing you're always talking about is how you don't have a lot of card draw outside of Beast or Robin Hood and the occasional Prince John draw or
Let the Storm Rage
on. So I think that could shore up that maybe just a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of times in the late game where you just top deck like an Ursula Deceiver or a Robin Hood, and then you're just like, this card does nothing.
Right.
So maybe being able to filter the late game draws out a little bit could help, especially with Ursula Deceiver of all. But you know, that's just something to talk about.
Grab your sword. I'm still going for that. Sorry. I can find a way to do both.
I get what you're saying with the grab your swords.
I'm just saying, but whatever. Anyway, we're gonna stop rambling, and
I like rambling with you.
I know, but they probably don't. So we will wrap things up for this week. And next week, we are going to talk about how the pack tournament goes, and also a lot of spoilers that have been getting revealed thus far. So we'll give you kind of our first impressions of some of the ones that stick out the most to us, good or bad.
All right, guys. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Have a good weekend and week.